العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
Because, about 2 weeks or so, or maybe more, because now, this book of Manhaj Saalikeen, Kitab al-Bay', there's only a few chapters left. Literally, just a few chapters. When we finished Al-Wadi' al-Ariya today, and Shuf'a, next week is only about Waqf and Hiba and something like that. So, what I want to do is finish Kitab al-Bay'. Kitab al-Bay'. When we finish Kitab al-Bay' next week or the week after, we're going to have about 2-week break. And then inshallah, hopefully, on the 29th of October, we're going to restart Al-Mirath or Fara'id, inheritance. And then we're going to carry on with Al-Am from Usul al-Fiqh. Is that understood? طيب. So Usul al-Fiqh is on hold for now until the 29th, inshallah, of what? Of October. طيب. The next book, Manhaj Saalikeen. يقول الشيخ عبد الرحمن السعدي. نبدأ شيخ عبد الرحمن. Just carry on. طيب. Today, first, any questions from Usul al-Fiqh? Say that again. What is the difference between Am and Mutlaq? What is Al-Ariya and Al-Wadi'a? We haven't reached it yet. When we get to it, I'll tell you. They're similar in the sense that they're both general, but one is Badali and one is Shumuli. Shumuli meaning Am Abdullah. Abdullah, all of the students came. That's Am. Lakin, or Akrim Abdullah, honor all of the students. Abdullah. So if I honor just the brothers and I don't honor the sisters, have I fulfilled the Am? La. But Al-Mutlaq is Badali, yani it's Umum. So if you say to me, Akrim Taliban, then I can just honor any one of you and khalas, I've done what is wajib upon me. طيب. Like inshallah we'll study that. Because the next chapter is Am and Khas and then Mutlaq and then Muqayyad. طيب. No more questions on Usul, صح؟ خلاص. الفقه. باب العارية. يقول الشيخ رحمه الله باب العارية والوديعة. العارية إباحة المنافع وهي مستحبة لدخولها في الإحسان والمعروف قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل معروف صدقة وإن شرط ضمانها ضمنها أو تعدى أو فرد فيها ضمنها وإلا فلا. العارية. عارية is borrowing. عارية is borrowing. خلاص. عارية is borrowing. As for the ta'rif of it, إباحة المنافع مع بقاء الأصل من غير عوض without a payment. إباحة المنافع مع بقاء الأصل من غير عوض. طيب. So the first mas'ala, the Shaykh says rahimahullah, so that is that definition of ariya. Ibahatul manafi', it is the usage of the benefits of an item. The usage of the benefits of an item. Not the mulk. The usage, ibahatul manafi'. مع بقاء الأصل, whilst the actual item remains. من غير عوض, without any payment. An example, I lend Abdullah a book. That book, who owns the book? I own the book. What have I given Abdullah? Ibahatul manafi'. I have made it permissible to benefit from that book. The benefit, does he own? No. He only owns the usage of that book. He only owns the usage of that book. طيب مع بقاء الأصل, and the asl of the book remains. The actual book, even though he's using it, the book, it remains. صح؟ طيب من غير عوض, without any payment. So it is borrowing. طيب. Based on that, if I can, is it okay for Abdullah to say to me, Ustad, borrow me your water. Borrow me your water. Why not? Because the asl won't be baqi. By the time he's done with the bottle, khalas, there's no water in there. By the time he's done with the bottle, there's no water in there. طيب. Wherever the Shaykh says ibahatul manafi', there we find the difference between ijara and إجارة and إعارة. طيب. إباحة المنافع. This person now that I've given it to Abdullah, he owns what? إعارة. He owns, he's able to benefit from it, to use it. Can he now give it to someone else to borrow? No. طيب, what about if he rents out something from me, a car? I rent out cars. He rents a car from me. Is it permissible for him to now let someone else drive that car? Huh? Huh? Why? It is ijara. Okay, excellent. We've studied that.
But this one he owns the item. The other one he only owns the benefit. He gets to benefit from. Temporary ownership.
Okay. نعم. ملك النفع. ملك النفع. He owns the naf'i. So that is the difference between what? Ijara and i'ara. So the person that borrows an item, he can't give it to someone else because he is only given ibaha of that. Not ibahatul mulk, lakin ibahatul naf'i. He is able to take advantage of it. Lakin he doesn't own that benefit. Lakin if he rents out a house, he can sublease it if he wants, because he owns the benefit. He doesn't own the ayn. That is not mulkul ayni. Mulkul ayn is when you own the item. So the house, for example, that is renting out, it belongs to the landlord. Like in the mulk, the naf'i belongs to him. Is that understood? طيب. And then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَهِيَ مُسْتَحَبَّةٌ. The ruling of it is that it is mustahab. لدخولها في الإحسان, because it comes under goodness والمعروف and kindness. لكن it is mustahab for who? It is mustahab for the one that is given. For example, now I give it to Abdullah, I borrow Abdullah a book. It is mustahab on my behalf, because the Prophet ﷺ said, the Shaykh says, كل معروف صدقة. Every type of goodness is a form of charity. Also Allah Jalla wa'ala says, وأحسنوا إن الله يحب المحسنين. And do good, Allah loves the good doers. So I am doing him a favor. As for Abdullah, what is the ruling of i'ara or ariya, borrowing? Mubah. It is mubah. The ruling is that it is mubah, because the Prophet ﷺ did so, and the haja, the need, is there. The haja is need, the haja or the need for it is there. طيب. So the Shaykh says, لدخولها. نعم. وإذا شرطت ضمانها ضمنها. طيب. إعادة, the asl, يد الأمانة and يد الضمان. Al-Ariya, sisters, is it يد الأمانة or يد الضمان? We now know these terminologies. Is it يد الأمانة, the hand? Is it the يد أمانة or يد الضمان? Huh? I can't hear. Huh? يد الضمان. يد الأمانة, excellent. يد الأمانة. Why is it يد الأمانة? Huh? Give permission. You've been given permission by the owner. So the asl of the ariya is that yaduha yadul amana. That is the asl. So right, al aslu fil ariya al amana or yadul amana. Anna yadaha yadul amana. That is the asl. So now we've understood that. So it's as if we're now carrying on with Shaykh Sa'd and saying, lakin wa in shurita. However, so now that we know that, the asl is that it is yadul amana, we're saying the Shaykh, or we're with the Shaykh now, we're saying وَإِن شُرِطَتْ غَمَانُهَا. Lakin, if a person stipulates a condition and says, if it is destroyed, then you have to pay for it. So if Abdullah, the book that I've lent to him, if he destroys it, or if it is damaged whilst he has it, if I place this condition upon him, then he has to fulfill that condition. Is that understood? So now we're moving away from the asl, which is me placing a condition. أو تعدى, or he transgresses. أو فرط, or he has a shortcoming. التعدي is what? In the books that we're studying, التعدي فعل ما لا يجوز, to do that which is not permissible. فرط, التفريط is what? إهمال ما يجب فعله أو ترك ما يجب فعله. نعم, leaving off something that you were meant to do. طيب, فيها ضمنها, then he is bound to that guarantee, and he has to do pay that guarantee, pay for the damages. He has to compensate for that damage. طيب, the asl for ariya is what? Amana. So he doesn't have to compensate. It can become wajib in 3 instances. What are they? If a person places a condition, the one that is given out, or ta'addi, if a person transgresses, or if a person has shortcoming. طيب, مثلا, for example, a person is given a book, he takes it and he puts it in his bag. He goes home and he leaves it in his bookshelf. And when he's reading it, he puts it on his table. And then he goes out and he leaves it in his maktaba when he's going out. He leaves it on the shelf. And then there's a flooding in the house. Is Abdullah held to account for that? No. طيب, okay. What if he now takes the book from me and he leaves it, he goes to a restaurant and he leaves it on the table. Or he goes to a shop and while it's getting something out of his pocket, he leaves it on the counter and he walks off. Is he held to account for it? No. Why? Because he left off, he did not look after it as he was meant to. طيب. Also, the ariya, when we're talking about in minahit al-aqd, from the aqd point of view, what is it? Aqdun lazimun or aqdun jaizun? It is aqd which is jaiz. It is not binding. So at any time, I can say to Abdullah, Abdullah, give my book back. Is that understood? It is an aqd that is jaiz. A aqd that is jaiz. So it means what? At any time I can pull him back on that and say, listen, give me my book back. Unless it's one of two. Unless we've placed unless we've put down a time frame. For example, a week later or 2 weeks later. Right? So if Abdullah says, listen, I'm going to keep this book for 2 weeks, and I say, طيب, keep it for 2 weeks. طيب, keep it for 2 weeks. خلاص. I cannot now come back in a week and say, listen, give me my book. Why? Because the time was what? The time that I gave him was 2 weeks. The time that I gave him was 2 weeks. So it is not permissible. Why? Because number one, al-Muslimuna ala shurudihim. Also, وَإِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفْ. يعني the ayat al-munafiq ثلاث. The ayat or the signs of a munafiq, a hypocrite, is 3. From them is إِذَا وَعَدَ, if he gives an oath or trust, then he is فَأَخْلَفَ, he doesn't stick to that. That is the first one. And in the second instance, that it doesn't become aqd jaiz is if it harms the other person. If it harms the other person, the one that is borrowing the book. For example, now, it's exam time. Let's say it's exam time. Right? Let's say one of you borrowed the explanation of Manhaj Saalikeen from someone. Kitab al-Bay'. Let's say one of you now borrowed the book Manhaj Saalikeen from someone, the explanation. طيب. And then you said to him you're going to give it back, but obviously when you finish with it. طيب. And then a person comes in the week of the exams. Now you got your exam this week, sah? Someone comes to you and says, listen, Abdullah, I need my Manhaj Saalikeen back. Does Abdullah have to give it back to me now? No, because now he's been harmed by it. Because if I take the book from him at the time of the exams, he's harmed by it. Just like if I give him my car and say and he says, can I borrow your car? I said, khalas, borrow it. and then he travels down to another city. And then I happen to be in that city. A few days later, I see him in that city. I say, Abdullah, mashallah, how are you? Give me my car back. I need the car now. Is that possible? Why not? Why is that not possible? Huh? But how's he going to get back? You've taken the car from him halfway through. So because he's harmed from it, then that you can't say al-'ari is aqda is jaiz, therefore I am not going to stick to it. طيب. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, من أودع وديعة فعليه حفظها في حجز مثلها ولا ينتفع بها بغير إذن ربها. طيب. The next mas'ala is al-wadi'a. Al-wadi'a is simply placing an item with another person to look after for you. It is tawkil. You're asking someone to look after a book for an item for you. And the reason, for example, now, if I've got a large sum of money and I'm traveling, and I say to Abdullah, look after this 100,000 for me. I'm going to be back in 2 weeks. That is al-wadi'a. Suratul Mas'ala. I say to Abdullah, this item, I'm going to be traveling, please look after this for me. طيب. Look after this item for me. That is al-wadi'a. The Shaykh says, وَمَنْ أُودِعَ, whoever is given wadi'at and something to look after, فَعَلَيْهِ حِفْظُهَا فِي حِفْظِ مِثْلِهَا. It is wajib for him to what? To preserve it and to look after it. Number one, it is wajib to look after it. Okay? What is the hukum of this? It is mustahab for the person that is looking after it. Why? Because it is a part of ihsan. And Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَأَحْسِنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So for the one that is looking after the item, it is what? Mustahab on his behalf. And the one that the item is being looked after for, it is mubah from his perspective. Is that understood? طيب. As for it being wajib for him to, فَعَلَيْهِ يعني عليه, ala is from those things that show wajibness, that something is wajib. عليه, upon him, is that he looks after it. طيب. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Verily, Allah Jalla wa Ala commands you to give the trust back to its people, the people that are rightfully own it. And there's also an ijma' between Ahl al-Ilm, and also it comes under goodness. It comes under goodness. طيب. So wadi'a. The reason why the scholars mention these examples, the examples that they mention is mal, for example, the one that leaves a mal next to someone. Because previously, yani in the past, they didn't have banks. They did not have banks. So then he says the next mas'ala is fi higzi mithliha. Fi higzi mithliha. In a well fortified place, mithliha. That item is looked after in. Al-higz, inshallah, when we get to hudud, the capital punishment, when we're talking about sariqa, we're going to talk about al-higz. Higz, yani ha-ra-za. Higz is that place where something is preserved, stored. A place where something is stored. That's what higz means. And every item is different to the next item. Every item is different to the next item. Like, مثلا, for example, if I give Abdullah a book, I say, hold on to these books. I'll give him 5 books. I say, listen, I can't carry these 5 books with me now. Look after these 5 books for me. If he takes these 5 books and he places it on his table at home, a desk in his maktaba, or he places it on the shelf, is that reasonable? So higzu mithliha, the place for the book to be stored is a shelf, for example. Or if he leaves it in a bag and he leaves it somewhere in his room, that is also acceptable. Like, what about if I leave him 100 grand, or I leave him 50 grams of gold, and he takes it and he puts it on his shelf next to the books? Is that justified? La. Is that a normal place for storing gold or money? La, it is not. طيب. What if I say to him, look after مثلا a book for me, and he looks after 5 books and he puts it in his boot. That is acceptable, that's fine. Because normally you can leave books in a boot and it's not, no one will take it. طيب. Like what if he leaves that gold, 100 grams of gold in his boot? That's a shortcoming from him. صح? طيب. A car, I leave my car with him. I leave my car with him. And I say to him, look after my car. طيب. He leaves it out in front of his house, either on the driveway, in the garage, or in the parking outside of the house, on the road. And then something happens to it. Is there a shortcoming from him in where he placed the car? No. طيب. What about if he takes it to a parking lot, a Tesco or Sainsbury's parking lot, and he leaves the car there, and then 3 weeks later a fine comes through, £300 fine because he left it in there for 3 days? Is he to be held to account for that or me? Him. Why? Shortcomings from him. He didn't place it في حجز مثلها. He didn't place it in a place that cars are normally stored. I don't expect him to put it in his shelf. I don't expect him to put it in his garden. طيب. No one puts a car in the garden. But again, no one leaves the car overnight in a parking lot. Is that understood? So في حجز مثلها, when you is the leaving an item where it is usually kept. Where it is usually kept. مثلا, for example, I give him clothing to look after for me, a suitcase of bags to look after for me, and he puts it in front of his house and it gets stolen. Is that a place to leave clothes? No, of course not. Like, and if he takes it into his house and into his bedroom, then obviously it is left, it is fine. طيب. So with regards to the wadi'a, if there's no shortcoming, it is عقد الأمانة. If there's no shortcoming from him and no transgression from him, then he doesn't have to pay for that. He doesn't have to pay for that. طيب. Let's go back to one mas'ala, which is with i'ara, what is permissible to lend out? We've got enough time for questions. Like, what is permissible to lend out? كل ما فيه نفع وما هو مباح. المباح النافع. It has to be something which is beneficial, and it has to be something which is mubah, permissible. Books, cars, phones, computers. That is all permissible. And things that are haram, then you can't lend them out anyway. Things that are haram, you can't lend them out anyway. For example, alatul lahu, musical instruments, can't lend it out. Can you do ariya of al-khamar, alcohol? Is that even possible? Why? Not even the nafi, when we're talking about the actual item. No, it's haram to own it, but the asl, هل يبقى الأصل? The asl doesn't remain. Asl, if he's bad enough, he'll drink it. طيب. So things that are mubah, that are permissible, that's from the item itself. As for the other person that you're lending it out to, the item that you're lending out, that person, you must not know he's going to use it in a way that is haram. For example, let's say you own an AK-47 and then there's a war between 2 tribes, or a friend of yours had his phone stolen and he's extremely angry, or robbed, and he comes to you and says, Abdullah, listen, let me borrow your gun for now, I'll bring it back to you before 8 p.m. Is it halal for you to lend it out to him? Huh? La. Why? Because you know he's going to use it in a way that is haram. You know that he's going to use it in a way that is haram. Just like it is haram for you to sell in the times of fitna. Remember when we were studying in the beginning of the book? It's haram for you to sell weapons during the time of fitna. طيب. That's with regards to al-wadi' and al-ariya. Inshallah, next week we'll start with al-shuf'a, and hopefully we'll finish the book fairly soon.